You're floating at the edge of something that doesn't want to end. Not a wall, not a border, just a slow collapse of meaning. There's still light, but it bends differently here, slower, as if tired. Even time pulls away from itself, unraveling in threads you can't see, only feel. And in front of you, a girl stands motionless, not in awe, not in fear, but as if listening to something we no longer have the language for. She's not looking at the edge, she's listening through it. Her shadow stretches behind her like a question no one dares ask aloud. We call it the universe. But what if that word is too small? What if beyond the stars, beyond the dark, beyond the last photon, we are no longer inside anything? No reference, no orientation, no place to stand. The question isn't, what's out there? The question is, what happens when out there stops being a place at all? And suddenly, you're not sure if you're drifting forward, or if space itself is backing away from you, quietly, as if trying not to wake something. They say the universe is infinite, but what they mean is, it has no edge we can see. That's not the same. We live inside an expanding sphere of knowledge, a fragile bubble of observable light stretched across 13.8 billion years. Not because that's where the universe ends, but because that's how far light has had time to reach us. Beyond that, there could be anything, or nothing. And the truth is, we don't know which one is more terrifying. From our small point in space, we see galaxies retreating, accelerating outward, drawn not by force but by the shape of space-time itself. The universe is not growing into something, it's growing into itself. Space is stretching, and the more it stretches, the less of it we can see. That edge, the so-called cosmic horizon, isn't a boundary, it's a vanishing point. Every second, galaxies slip past it, not because they move, but because the fabric between us expands, like dots on a balloon, drifting apart as the rubber swells. But what is the balloon expanding into? There's no answer that fits inside the rules we've made. Space is not expanding into empty space. It is space. Which means the further you try to imagine outside the universe, the more reality collapses inward. You're not looking beyond. You're folding logic in on itself. And yet, every instinct we have, every metaphor, every word pushes us to imagine a beyond. We dream of a place past the stars, a void, a doorway, a second layer, something, anything. Because the alternative, that there is no outside at all, is unthinkable. But maybe it's not about what's outside. Maybe the question is why we feel so deeply that there must be something more. Why does the edge haunt us? In a desert observatory, under the thinnest night, a woman adjusts a telescope, alone, focused. She's not searching for stars, she's watching the silence between them. And in her gaze, there's no awe, just quiet persistence. The kind you feel when something doesn't make sense but refuses to leave you alone. Like a memory you never made but somehow remember. Because the truth is, our entire universe might be a pocket of temporary order inside a deeper, more chaotic sea. A bubble, born from quantum fluctuation, stabilized by chance, expanding into what? We don't know, but the math suggests it. The cosmic microwave background, our map of the early universe, shows fluctuations, tiny scars of a beginning we still don't understand. And some physicists believe there are other bubbles, countless, inflating eternally, disconnected from each other by gulfs of unreachable time. Our universe may be just one breath in a much longer exhale. So when you stare up at the night sky, remember, you're not looking out. You're looking into a membrane of possibility stretched thin across a void that has no edge, only tension. We're not inside a universe, we're inside a question. And that question keeps getting bigger. If space can stretch, then what holds it? If the universe can expand, what is it expanding into? These aren't just semantic riddles. They're cracks in the foundation of how we think about existence. Because when we reach the limits of our measurements, our mathematics, even our metaphors, we begin to glimpse something stranger. Not a place beyond the universe, but a condition in which place no longer applies. Physicists call it non-space. A realm where coordinates mean nothing, where time may not tick, where the tools of observation, distance, direction, causality collapse into abstraction. This isn't the void of science fiction. It's worse. It's the absence of geometry itself, the absence of even absence. Because when we talk about what lies outside the universe, we're not describing an edge, we're describing the failure of description. During the earliest moments after the Big Bang, far before galaxies, before atoms, before even light, the universe was governed by a seething chaos of quantum fields. No up, no down, just probability dancing in uncertainty. Some theories suggest that what we see now is just one outcome, one crystallized possibility out of a formless soup that could have become anything, or nothing. In this view, the universe as we know it emerged not from a place, but from a transition, a quantum fluctuation that stabilized into space and time. And like a droplet forming on a window, it didn't need a frame. It only needed contrast, something to define it by its difference. That something might not be space, it might not even be real by our standards, but it gave rise to us. So when you ask what's outside the universe, you're asking what's beyond definition. You're trying to measure silence with a ruler. And still, we try. One of the most haunting ideas in modern physics is that space is emergent, that it isn't fundamental, that it arises like temperature or pressure from something deeper, something that doesn't itself exist in space. Some quantum physicists believe that space is woven from entanglement, that where there is no information shared between particles, there is no space, no distance, no between. Think about that. Two particles can be next to each other, yet infinitely far apart, because nothing connects them. And two particles can be light years away, yet closer than breath, because they share information. In this model, space is not a backdrop, it's a consequence. It's a shadow of relation. So what's beyond the universe? Perhaps nothing, because the very act of beyond implies relation. And outside this bubble, there may be no relation to anything at all. Somewhere, a girl walks across a salt flat at dawn. No hills, no trees, just sky and dust stretching out in perfect sameness. She pauses, not because she's lost, but because there's nowhere to go that isn't the same. She kneels, touches the ground, listens, not to sound, but to the silence of being unmeasured. This is where space ends, not at a wall, but at a failure of difference. And maybe that's the true terror of the edge. Not that there's something waiting, but that there's not even a place for anything to wait in. We like to believe we're inside something singular, one universe, one story, one totality. But the deeper we look into the structure of reality, the more it frays. The equations don't converge neatly at the origin. The constants seem too perfect, the conditions too precise. It starts to look suspicious, as if our universe was selected, not inevitable, as if there were others. Welcome to the multiverse, not a theory, but a family of them. Some spring from string theory, which predicts a near-infinite landscape of possible vacuum states, each with different physical laws. Others arise from eternal inflation, a model where the Big Bang isn't a one-time event, but a local eruption in a field that never stops bubbling. In this view, our universe is a pocket, a bubble, one of countless others expanding into a churning sea of quantum froth. Each universe, like ours, sealed off from the rest, unreachable, unseeable, governed by its own rules. It's a terrifying thought, and a humbling one, because it means we might not be the center, not even of existence, but of relevance. We could be a rare fluke or an inevitable byproduct, a happy accident in an infinite lottery. But even more disturbing, we might never know, because these other universes, if they exist, are causally disconnected. No signal can reach us from them, no probe, no telescope, no message. It's not that they're far, it's that they are elsewhere. Not in space, but alongside it, like pages in a book you can't flip to. You're trapped in one story. Still, there are clues, tiny hints that our universe isn't alone. Patterns in the cosmic microwave background, odd cold spots, alignments, asymmetries that don't quite fit. They could be noise, or they could be brushstrokes from another bubble brushing past ours long ago, leaving ripples we've only now begun to decode. Imagine two universes collide, not violently, but softly, like membranes kissing. Their edges warp, their constants fluctuate, and somewhere inside one of them, a spiral galaxy leans just slightly the wrong way. That anomaly, on some forgotten map, might be all we have left of the moment two realities almost touched. And if there are others, what do they look like? Some might be like ours, only colder or older, or with different particles, different chemistry, different rules. Some might blink out before stars are born. Others might last trillions of years, and some, if the math holds, might support minds, eyes, observers, beings that look up just like us and wonder, are we alone? In a mirror world lit by blue suns, a girl stands by an ocean made of methane. The sky is violet, the gravity soft. She sketches patterns in the sand, not knowing that somewhere, light years and laws away, someone else is asking the same question she just wrote down. Not who we are, but what else could be. The multiverse doesn't answer what's beyond our universe, but it reframes the question. Because if we're not alone, then beyond isn't distance. It's difference, it's possibility. It's the idea that this isn't the only way things could have been. And that means, even if we can't leave our bubble, we're still surrounded. Not by nothing, but by everything that could have been. What if the reason we can't find the edge of the universe is because we're not meant to? Because there is no edge, because there is no real at all. Just rendering limits, just code, just an illusion stitched together with breathtaking precision. It's a hypothesis that began as a thought experiment and now refuses to leave the room, the simulation argument. Here's the unsettling logic. If it becomes possible for any civilization to simulate a conscious reality indistinguishable from their own, then statistically, most conscious beings aren't in the base reality, they're in simulations. And if that's true, we're probably among them. It doesn't require malice, it doesn't even require intent, just processing power and pattern, and a structure complex enough to fool its contents. Look around. The speed of light, finite, unbreakable. Quantum behavior, random until observed. The Planck length, the smallest measurable unit of space. These aren't just curiosities, they look like system parameters, rendering constraints, boundaries written into the firmware of existence. But what's outside a simulation? Nothing? Or someone? Maybe there is no outside. Maybe we are the thoughts of a higher mind, or the lines of a program so recursive it forgot who wrote it. Or maybe we're ancestors, run again and again in memory, trying to answer questions our creators never could. It's not about sci-fi, it's about inference. When we simulate things, weather, populations, evolution, we simplify. But what happens when the simulation becomes more complex than the reality it came from? What if our emotions, our stories, our stargazing are byproducts of a loop too intricate to end? A feedback of curiosity that never stabilizes. In this model, the universe beyond ours is not physical, it's ontological. It exists not above or outside, but in a different mode, a different kind of being. If space and time are lines of code, then the question isn't what's out there, but what's the code running on? And yet, here we are, feeling, choosing, losing people, watching sunsets. We might be simulated, but the pain is real, the love is real. Consciousness, whatever its substrate, still suffers and still dreams. In a quiet room filled with light from nowhere, a girl places her hand on the wall. It's smooth, blank. She presses, expecting nothing, but the surface ripples. Just once, then stillness again. She doesn't smile, she simply steps back and begins to wonder if that moment was hers or placed for her to find. Because in a simulation, mystery might be the interface, the limit we bump into so we keep moving, keep asking, keep playing the part of explorers in a stage too perfect to question, until we do. And if that's the truth, then what's beyond the universe is exactly what you'd expect from a good design, just enough unknown to keep you wondering. At some point, the question folds in on itself, not what's beyond, but who is asking. Because if space and time are emergent, if the universe is structured like a simulation or a bubble or a probabilistic ghost, then what are we inside it? Not just observers, but participants. Not just participants, but amplifiers. Maybe even mirrors. Consciousness doesn't sit on top of matter, it runs through it, like current through wire, like wind through grass. It emerges from physical processes, yes, but it also transforms them. Observers collapse wave functions. Choice alters probability. Awareness reshapes the shape of knowing. Every thought you have sends ripples through a nervous system made of stardust and quantum charge. The universe is not thinking about itself through us, it is thinking as us. And that thought has a rhythm. When you wonder what's beyond the universe, you're not just asking a scientific question. You're echoing a recursive loop, a loop that starts with entropy and ends with memory. From nothing to structure to life to mind to meaning to asking, what is beyond all this? That question is not outside the system, it is the system. It's how a closed world opens itself through thought, through paradox, through the absurd miracle of a brain looking up at the stars and knowing, even briefly, that it is made of them. Some scientists speak of the anthropic principle, The idea that we observe a universe finely tuned for life because we are here to observe it. But that's too small. The deeper realization is this: the universe isn't just fit for thought. Thought is one of its modes, one of its dimensions, a structure of perception as real as any law of physics. And what does that mean for the edge? It means maybe there is no beyond until we ask. Maybe the act of questioning carves a path. Maybe new realities bloom not behind the stars, but within the folds of comprehension. In a cave of mirrors, a girl lights a match. For a moment, the flame reflects in 1,000 directions. But the mirrors aren't static. They respond. They learn. Each reflection sharpens, corrects, aligns, not with the original, but with her intention. She watches herself multiply. Not copies, not illusions, just one awareness, expanding outward in angles too complex to follow. And maybe that's what we are. Not data, not cells, but angles of reflection. The universe looking at the universe and slowly realizing it's not alone. Because the edge isn't a line, it's a threshold. Not a wall you hit, but a silence you carry. The point where perception reaches its limit and chooses to keep going anyway. And what's beyond that? Maybe the next thought. Stand far enough away from anything, and it becomes small. Even the universe, even the whole of reality we think we know. Galaxies become dust, time becomes a ripple, light becomes a memory. And you, just one observer on a rock orbiting a star, begin to wonder if what you see is all there is, or just the part that answers back. We assume the universe is everything, that by definition it contains all that can exist. But definitions don't set boundaries. They reflect ignorance. Every model we've made, every map we've drawn, every telescope we've pointed at the dark, it's all framed by the assumption that this, whatever it is complete, self-contained, total. But nature doesn't care about completeness, it cares about process. And what we call the universe might be nothing more than a phase, a ripple in a deeper ocean, a sentence in a book we cannot read. There could be meta-laws, meta-realities, structures beyond what physics can reach, not because they're far, but because they're orthogonal. Not out there, but alongside in a way our minds aren't yet wired to perceive. Theories like the holographic principle suggest that our 3D universe could be a projection of information encoded on a 2D surface beyond our perception. Other ideas, like conformal cyclic cosmology, imagine our universe as just one aeon in a chain of cosmic lifetimes, each rising from the ashes of the last, endlessly recycling energy and complexity into new beginnings. And yet, none of this feels final. It feels recursive. Like every time we get close to the edge folds away. Not as a trick, but as an invitation. Because maybe the universe isn't meant to be understood as a thing. Maybe it's a direction, a movement, a kind of becoming. What we call reality might just be the part of that movement we're tuned to. And every time we ask what lies beyond it, we pull a little more of it into view. Somewhere on a high plateau, under an eclipsed sky, a girl lifts a black cloth from an old mirror. She doesn't see herself. She sees the stars behind her, distorted, layered, infinite. She smiles, not because she understands, but because something inside her recognizes the shape of the unknown. It doesn't frighten her. It calls her. She steps back, and the mirror stays lit, though the sky goes dark. Because the unknown isn't what ends the story, it's what lets the story begin again. And so we end where we started, not at the edge, but at the limit of what we can imagine. There may be no wall, no outside, no answer, but the question remains, and maybe that's all we need. What if the universe isn't everything? What if it's just the start of something we don't yet have the words for?